Hey everyone, I'm Ace of Clay and welcome to another sculpting video. Today, I'm sculpting the white figure from the game, The Mortuary Assistant. Now, the second I started watching clips from this game, I thought I have to find something to sculpt from it. I was like, I could sculpt a dead body, but then this guy popped up and I was like, yep, I'm gonna sculpt you. And that's exactly what I did today and I really think you're gonna like him. So if you're not familiar with The Mortuary Assistant, you are basically playing a mortician's assistant and you're helping him embalm bodies and prepare people for burial. But in the middle of your job, you keep encountering different demons and monsters and stuff like that. You see things all over the place. It's a really, really creepy game. Definitely one of the creepiest games I've ever seen. And there's a lot of jump scares. It's eerie. Of course, it's dark and rainy the whole time. And it's actually got a pretty deep story to it that I thought was pretty interesting. So if you want to learn more about the game, you can go play it or watch one of the YouTubers on here play it for you. And then before we get started, don't forget there are only a couple more weeks to see the Seamstress, Pretzel the Clown, and Otto the Raccoon guide at My Pops Comics and Collectibles in Shelby Township, Michigan. If you're in the area, I hope you can stop by to see them. And then these are the Series 2 trading cards that are going to be coming out next week, I hope. So keep your eye out on my social media pages. I'll probably release them on like my Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that first, and then I'll mention them in my video next week, Friday. So yeah, I got them right here. And there's a lot of really cool stuff in them that I didn't do last time, and I'm really excited for you to see them. I'm really proud of this series. And now without further ado, let's sculpt this creepy little dude. Alright, let's get started. For this project, I'm using some 12 gauge aluminum wire, and we're going to shape out this guy's armature as if he were standing, and then we'll put him into a squatting position later on. And all the materials that I use in this video are listed in the description box below, along with my affiliate links if you want to purchase anything. And I'm just going to connect the arms with a piece of floral wire, and then secure the waist with some more floral wire. Once I've got the body figured out, it's time to get him into his sitting position, and we're just going to bend the legs first to make sure everything is proportionate and looks right. Now let's go ahead and brush some of that wire with some Bacon Bond so that our ultralight that we're going to add in a second sticks perfectly. Now we're just going to bulk out that torso with the ultralight, and you can also use aluminum foil for this. I just prefer the ultralight because it gives me a really smooth surface to add my final layer of clay. When you bulk out areas of your sculpture, you want to make sure that you're not making the bulk as big as the final piece. You want it to be a little bit smaller because that extra clay that you're going to add later is going to take up that extra space. Now let's get this guy in the oven. And now that he's baked and cooled down, it's time to start covering him in clay. For this project, I'm using some Super Sculpey Living Doll. And I'm going to start by covering that torso and smoothing everything out, and then we can start adding the details. I like to work with the biggest areas first. Now we're going to do some of those chest details. This guy looks like he works out a little bit, I'm not going to lie, so we're going to give him some nice muscle structure. Once I've got all of the different shapes added for his muscles, I'm going to go ahead and start blending those in with my spoon tool. And then before we go any further, let's go ahead and give him a neck. Now this guy's body is covered in cracks and wrinkles, so I'm going to start making some of the larger wrinkles with the tip of my thumb. And then I'm going to go in and refine them with my Explorer tool and Cone Rubber Shaper tool. And we can't forget these. And now it's time to go crazy with our texture. I just want to create some larger wrinkles like this, sort of spanning across the width of his chest, and then we're going to go in with the very tip of our rubber shaper and create the little cracks. He's got a very crackly texture, almost like, you know, those spray paints that you can buy that have a crackle effect, and you wait a minute and then all the paint cracks and you can see the color underneath. That's pretty much what he looks like. So let's go ahead and try to create that look as closely as possible. Alright, now let's start the legs. Gonna add some Bacon Bond to my wire so my clay sticks really nice. Roll out that snake of clay and get it wrapped around that wire. And honestly, my best advice for sculpting realistically shaped limbs is to just mess with them until they look right. And if something's off, just keep messing with them more, and you can get yourself some visual references. You can look at some anatomy studies. That, of course, always helps. And to be quite honest with you, I hate sculpting realistic human bodies with no clothes on them like this, because it's just the bane of my existence. If one little tiny thing is off, it throws off the whole thing. And I know that might come as a surprise with how many humanoids I make, but it's the truth. And I think sculpting the body makes the fun part, which for me is sculpting the face and head, way worth it. All right, after doing that other leg off camera, we're going in with some more of that texture. But yeah, if you're like me and there's a certain thing that you just can't stand sculpting, just push through and do it if you have to do it. Like, for example, I could sculpt faces and heads for the rest of my life and be totally happy. That's my favorite part. But, you know, there's got to be a body attached to the heads, so I just have to, you know, push through and do it. So don't let not liking the process of sculpting a certain area or thing stop you from sculpting altogether. All right, looking pretty good after he's baked. Now let's talk about the sponsor. Alright, now before we get into the rest of the video, let's take a second to talk about our sponsor, BetterHelp. Is there something getting in the way of your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? I know I've been there before, I know a lot of you have, and I know the importance of mental health, especially when it comes to being a content creator and making a new sculpture every week. BetterHelp will assess your goals and match you with your very own licensed professional therapist, and you can start communicating within 48 hours. It is not a crisis line, it is not self-help, it is licensed professional counseling done securely online. There is a broad range of expertise in BetterHelp's 15,000 counselor network, which may not locally be available in many areas. BetterHelp is available worldwide, and you can log in at any time to send a message to your counselor. You will get timely and thoughtful responses, and you can even schedule weekly video or phone sessions. And you will never have to sit in an uncomfortable waiting room as with traditional therapy. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches. That's why they make it easy and free to change counselors if you need to. BetterHelp is more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and financial aid is available. BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life starting today. Visit betterhelp.com/aceofclay, that's better HELP, and join the over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. And because you're one of my subscribers or you're just watching this video, you can save 10% on your first month of BetterHelp. Just go to betterhelp.com/aceofclay. Now back to the sculpture. Back to the sculpture indeed. Time to put the arms on, and if you didn't notice earlier, I barely mentioned it, I did pre-bake the torso and the legs so that I'm not smashing them all over the place while I do these arms. That would have been really hard, and especially since this is a smaller figure than what I'm used to making, a different scale, and I have really large hands, so it's really easy for me to smash things. Alright, now for the next step, after I attach the forearm in a sec, I'm going to take my Excel blade to cut the bend in the arm. Arms aren't noodles, and the bicep area isn't necessarily going to be facing the same direction as the forearm all the time. You can see this when you put your arms out in front of you and you flip your hands back and forth. So I'm going to take this into account with how I cut that area. I'm going to make the angle for the bicep a little more forward than the angle of the forearm. Doing this wrong is either going to make or break your arms. No pun. And once I attached that other arm and made that, and you know, of course, capped off the shoulders with a nice delt, I'm going to go ahead and start working on the feet. For the feet and hands, I'm using some cos clay because it stays flexible after you bake it. And of course, we can't forget that ankle bone. Alright, now to make the hands, I just added that palm area to my wire and I'm attaching the fingers individually. This would have been a lot easier if I would have made this hand separately and attached it later. And now it's time to finish up that texture all over the place. We're just going to go crazy with the tip of our cone shaper tool. And now that the body's done, we're going to set it aside and start the head. Got a little ball of aluminum foil, and I'm going to add some clay and create this nice little egg shape. Now let's go ahead and press in the eye sockets and start those facial features. And if you're a beginner and you're trying to work at a smaller scale, make sure that your tools are small too. I know that might sound obvious, but you do have to scale your tools proportionately, because if you're using tools that are too big for something that's too small, you're going to run into issues and you're going to think like, oh, I can't sculpt. Why can't I sculpt? Well, it's because you're using too big of tools. So make sure you got some tiny tools for smaller sculpts. And as I was sculpting his face, I always thought that I recognized this guy from somewhere, maybe high school, but then it hit me, and I can't help but think that they were at least a little inspired by Jeff the Killer, the creepypasta, because he kind of has the same mouth, that huge grin, gummy grin with tiny little teeth in there, the white face, the black circles around the completely exposed eyes. I don't know, but Jeff the Killer doesn't have a nose, so I'll give them that much. This guy also, when he's done, looks kind of like the Russian sleep experiment, another creepypasta. But yeah, just my thoughts there. Now let's pop in his tiny little eyeballs. Now let's do some more wrinkles and cracks all over his face. Now we're going to attach his head with a little bit of bacon bond, stick it on that wire sticking out of his neck, and then blend everything together and smooth it all out. I kind of wish I wouldn't have pre-baked the neck. I wish I would have saved that for right now, but it worked out. It was just a little more time consuming than it had to be. And he's done. Let's go ahead and get him in the oven. And once he's baked and completely cooled down, looks pretty good. Cough, cough, Russian sleep experiment. Anyway, let's go ahead and paint him. I'm gonna paint him completely white first with some titanium white folk art matte acrylics paint. Wow, you know what I mean. And we're still painting that white. Alright, now let's go in and add a nice dark brown wash. This one is made by War Paints, and I just want to get into all of those little cracks that I made. Spent a long time making all those little details. I want to make sure you can see every single one of them. Now after that wash is completely dry, I'm going to go in with a pretty thick dry brushing. I just want to hit all of the raised areas and only show all the cracks. So I'm just going to go over the whole surface again with some white, being very gentle and careful not to fill in any of the details. and just look like he's cracked. And this worked pretty well. Check it out. Now let's go ahead and paint all those little details like the black circles around his eyes and his Jeff the Killer, and his mouth. And now let's go in with some high gloss varnish on his eyes and mouth. Really finish him off. Now say it with me. And he's done! The white figure demon guy from the Mortuary Assistant is complete. Let me know what you think of him in the comments.